Alright, hey everybody, all of you Smurfs out there, welcome. Welcome to, I don't know what this is going to be like. We're doing another live stream riff analysis. Analysis is too strong a word for what we're going to be doing today. So, welcome. If you're new to the show, I'm Data Portal. I will be leading you through this hot mess. So, let's start with our old friend of the channel, Graham Linehan. Now, Graham Linehan, as many of you may know, may not know, is the comedy writer turned anti-trans activist on Twitter who wrote Father Ted or helped write Father Ted. Among other things, the IT crowd, yada yada. And if you know anything about Graham Linehan, you know that he is notorious for harassing trans people and their allies off of Twitter, sending them lots of abuse. One of his favorite things to do in life, apparently, is to call trans women ugly. If you've ever seen Graham Linehan's face, you know that this is supremely funny in its own sad way. And this isn't the screen I want to share. The screen I want to share. And Graham recently got into a little spat with Twitter, as you do. We all know how sometimes, Twitter just doesn't care, right? You're going about your business, tweeting whatever you want. Maybe you tweet something a little mean to somebody or a little more callous than you intended or whatever. And then you end up getting flagged. Graham Linehan recently got flagged by Twitter. I cannot remember or find exactly what it was that he tweeted about. It was very small compared to some of the abuse that's been on his account prior to this. He did do a pretty a thorough cleanup of his account. I don't know if he uses a bot to do it. There are a lot of tweets that I know should be there that can't be found anymore. So I don't know what his problem is, but Graham Linehan is now on a hunger strike, effectively. He's refusing to pull down his offending tweet. It's now been 6 days since his account last posted. And this is probably the most humiliated he's been for a while. And we're going to look at his history with Gamergate today. Now, like I said, there's a lot of missing stuff from Graham's account. But you know who doesn't care about what Graham thinks should be on his account is the Gamergaters, whom Graham Linehan was a very avid anti-Gamergater back in the day, as you can see here. Well, not necessarily from here, but we're just including some things that we know we can't find on Graham's account right now. So, Graham, here's a better example. So Graham used to be very anti-Gamergate. How authentic this is to his true self has been a matter of some debate. However, he recently came under scrutiny from his own camp, the TERFs, the trans exclusionary radical feminists, for a tweet that he made to Anita Sarkeesian, who, of course, is one of the central figures of Gamergate, one of the central targets of Gamergate. And that did not go well for him. So Anita Sarkeesian made a bit of a thread, and at the end she said, "Feminism is about equality, justice, and liberation. If you don't support the rights of trans people or access to abortion, or don't support efforts like Black Lives Matter or workers' rights, as just a few examples, you are not a feminist." To which Graham responded, what is this male pandering shite? I didn't support you during Gamergate so you could give women's rights away to another group of men." Which, of course, is how he looks at trans people. He only sees male to female trans people, or should I say AMAB trans people. And he also sees himself as a gifted lion, granting women his freedom, his power, his space. Oh, hi, wizard. So as we can see here, Graham did, in a sense, try to defend Anita Sarkeesian and others from Gamergate in his own way, we'll say. Here's Graham back in 2015. I hope that makes it a little bigger on the screen for you guys. Gamergaters complaining about being harassed. Guys, you're in a hate group. You and the KKK are just going to have to shut the shit up. Suck that shit up. Sorry. Some account I don't know. Based Viking. Gamergate is no hate group. It hates no one. It promotes ethical gaming journalism and other good things, which of course we know is nonsense. Graham responds, tell that to Zoe Quinn or Brianna Wu, two of the other main targets of Gamergate. They behaved unethically. This behavior was merely brought to light by Gamergate, Glinner. You are an asshole. See, nothing wrong with what Graham is saying so far. I'd go so far as to say most people with common sense would agree with what he's saying here. So let's move on to... Oh, I'm having trouble moving on. Come on. There we go. Okay. Here he is making fun of Milo Yiannopoulos. This GIF equals Milo and the few remaining Gamergaters. You can't really see it, I don't think, here. But anyway, this is a bunch of lizards licking at a puddle of something. It's either vomit or whatever. This is all new stuff. All right, I wanted to get to this one. Similarly, Gamergate was a pro-censorship movement. This is from 2017. Slightly before Graham went off his rocker and started attacking trans people for whatever reason. Oh my god, my browser is so stupid. Windows 10. Here's someone, Jay Blanc, as someone who used to be part of the research group for the IT crowd. I'd like to remind Mr. Linehan that he literally had to have Gamergate explained to him, and the premise for the jokes he used against them were given to him. Now, as part of the research group for the IT crowd that explained Gamergate to Glinner, I have to explain that he is aligning himself with an anti-trans feminist, quote, feminist group, whose abbreviation he claims is a slur, that is aligned with Gamergate philosophy. That being TERFs, of course. And this is Graham. Graham's original tweet: I knew as soon as repeal passed in Ireland, I'd become a target for the performatively woke. This is when Graham's open transphobia was becoming an issue for the internet. This is at the very start, when he was just a cute little egg before he had taken away money from many children. And this tweet, I want you to keep this tweet in mind, especially as we move forward. I like offensive comedy, the new call of the fucking bell end. The quoted tweet is unavailable. However, this is from 2018. This has been his response in the past to our friend Count Dankula and his Nazi pug shenanigans. So I want you to keep this one in mind. In fact, I'm gonna make a thing for this in the chat. I'm gonna just copy this verbatim. I should have done this before. You're getting top quality production here. Because I'm gonna be able to pop this up in the very, very near future. Okay, I've got it. So, or I don't have it. Okay, I'll try again. Sorry. All right, so the reason this is all coming to light today is because Graham has recently, for some unknown, shocking reason, had an epiphany about Gamergate. He switched sides in 2020. This is not a lie or a joke. This is what happened. Graham recently went on a YouTube channel called Triggernometry, which I've never heard of before. I must admit. I feel bad about that. But Graham went on in order to share with us that he has changed his mind. He has reversed himself on Gamergate. So he went on a Chud podcast, basically, and did an interview. Yesterday? Let me see. I think it's yesterday. Last night? Yeah, 23 hours. So last night. Last night if you're in Europe. Yesterday afternoon if you are in America. So, let us look at this beautiful example of just utter stupidity that I don't really understand. We're just going to go into this, but I want you to remember that tweet, which I am going to conveniently put up here for you. Wait, let me edit that so you remember where it's from. There, I'm done with that. And so remember this tweet at the bottom of your screen here. I like offensive comedy. The new call of the fucking bellend, 2018. Graham Linehan. Because Graham had a public spat with Count Dankula, but now, after he insulted Anita Sarkeesian and a bunch of women who previously have been very supportive of Graham, have suddenly realized that maybe he wasn't in this for their benefit the whole time. Shocker. That maybe the misogynistic Rumpelstiltskin, I guess, of a man is not actually a very good person. That losing his temper and thumping his leg was not his best face, shall we say. So we're just going to go through some of this and let me know if you can hear it. We'll see. I am just going to be pausing it intermediately, but I'm going to skip ahead the first minute or so. It's just introduction stuff. You know how it is. Just a reminder. I know it's in the title of the stream and it's very petty, but this man has spent the past 2 years of his life telling women that they're ugly. I just want that to be like the first thing we think of when we look at him. I mean, come on. God has a sense of humor. Further, Louis C.K. was not Me Too'd because of a joke. He was Me Too'd because of actions he took outside of the comedy sphere. No? Oh, no audio? Well, let me get through this. Let's see. I'll try it from scratch. Oh, that's why. I'm only allowed to share audio from the entire screen. So I'm only allowed to share audio from a tab or the whole screen. I'm not allowed to share it from a Chrome tab, though. That's weird. It's very weird. Okay. Whatever. I will just share the whole screen and hope that nothing terrible comes from that. Maybe. Okay, I hope this works. That working? It looks like it's working in the chat.
Are serious when they're telling jokes.
Okay, so let's go back.
Read things like Dave Chappelle launches attack on Michael Jackson victims, you know, this type of thing. When, you know, you look at it and it's
if that's working now, please let me know.
It's a setup for a joke. It's obviously the setup for a joke. So you have a very odd situation at the moment where journalists who are kind of setting themselves up as cultural gatekeepers are pretending that for some reason people like Dave Chappelle and Louis C.K. I realize he's more problematic, but they're pretending that these people are serious when they're telling jokes. And they write them down in journalism pieces. Like I know Louis C.K. made a routine about those kids who were all shot, and David Hogg, people like that.
Again, just pointing this out, Louis C.K. was not canceled because he made a bad joke. He was canceled, quote unquote, because he masturbated in front of a bunch of coworkers, especially those whom he had power over, which is not a cool thing. And he's on tour again already, so it wasn't that bad.
Yeah, who then went on and you know, became leaders of an anti-gun movement. He made a routine about them. Something, I think he said they were something like selfish. You know, it's such an absurd thing to say immediately about people who've been the subject of gun attacks, you know, at their school, and yet it's reported in this it's reported as if he's, I don't know, he's Trump or something. I don't know how to stop my WhatsApp messages getting through while we're.
This is the level of professionalism we expect on Trigonometry, Graham. But actually, on your very point, I wrote a piece about it, so I remember the details quite carefully.
Trigonometry. I still can't get over this name.
Quite accurately, I think. He didn't actually joke about the people that had been shot. What he joked about is the fact that the people who weren't shot were then being held up in the media as these paragons of virtue and truth on the gun debate. And he was saying the fact that you push some fat kid in front of you doesn't make you more interesting.
Yeah, which is so obviously, you know, said to produce a huge laugh from the audience, you know, and not serious in any way, you know.
Of course.
So there's a kind of a weird propaganda exercise going on where all these woke morons are pretending that comedians are serious about their material, you know. So I think
Graham's gonna try to make a few jokes later in this stream, and you can decide for yourself how funny he actually is. He doesn't seem to understand, because as we go forward, the trigonometry guys are going to start making fun of him in a very subtle way, but you're going to see it a lot. And it's going to go right over Graham's head because he has no idea. He's way out of his depth here, right? Like one of the jokes that will be made by the alt-right, especially at their little white power rallies that they like to hold, or at least they've tried to hold, that have blown up in their face every time, is I disavow, which is, of course, an acknowledgement that some of the more extreme elements don't belong in public spaces, let's say. But it's also a joke that the Jews control the media, so you have to disavow if you want the media to carry your message. Because either way, they have to get it in there somewhere, right? Like, it is a it is a joke, but it's also a joke that also carries all those white supremacist notations. Now, that's not the joke they like here. Later on, they'll say stuff like, oh yeah, by the way, Graham, just so we all know, I'm a feminist, ha 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 ha, in the same tone, in the same vein, mocking Graham because he keeps calling himself a feminist. And he doesn't get it, and he just laughs with it. So either Graham is really stupid, or he's way out of his depth, or he's just so cowardly that he won't defend himself. But keep an eye open for that.
And also, an interesting thing happened to me during my cancellation. I've had one or two people
calls it a cancellation. Twitter banned you for one tweet, and all you have to do is delete it, like a fucking grown-up that everyone else has had to do at least once if you tweet with any frequency, and he won't. That's what it is. White male privilege that thinks that he's so important that he can hunger strike Twitter, that if he doesn't tweet, Twitter will back down.
Big names meet me for lunch, and very kindly. I mean, you know, they don't say anything publicly. Jonathan Ross did. Jonathan Ross has been an absolute star. But a few other people meet me privately and talk to me about it. And one guy met me, and he said,
There's an old adage that if someone isn't making eye contact with you, they're lying.
He said, a comedian friend of his said, the joke that will destroy my career is already out there. And that's something that should scare all of us, because what it means is that, I don't know who said this, I think it was Richelieu or someone, you may know the quote I'm going for. He said something like, give me 3 letters by a person and I shall destroy them. Something like that. Mm. Which means that, you know, you can dig into any correspondence and find stuff that will hang someone. So imagine you have a comedian's entire Twitter history, which existed before all these taboos became taboos.
We do, Graham. Every comedian's history from before certain taboos. Like, Graham acts like Twitter is very, very new, but Twitter is over 10 years old at this point, right? 10 years old, 10 years ago, gay people couldn't get married in most of the Western world, right? Like, that's the thing. He's acting like this is all brand new. No, it's not brand new, Graham. It's just you didn't start making your entire life about insulting trans people until 2 years ago. So no one got up on your ass about it.
And can be just used to used to destroy people. And I think also another thing that's happening are people like Owen Jones and people like that are doing a similar thing. They're finding, like, something that happened to me during all of this was what's her name? Linda Riley of Diva Mag, the lesbian magazine for men. Anthony Watson.
As lesbian magazines are, Graham.
And Anthony Watson of GL AAAD.
Graham's still going on about how women's groups might be infiltrated by men, when he literally told Anita Sarkeesian that he didn't fight for her in Gamergate so she could say trans rights.
I think it is. But they both did what they did. I mean, it's so obvious what they did. They ran a search on my Twitter timeline for words like cunt and faggot, you know? They found one cunt, which I said to Theresa.
He's since deleted most of these, by the way. We know that they were on his timeline very recently, though. Unfortunately, the only thing that exists now are screen caps. Aww.
I apologize for. Didn't say it to her, said it about her. And another one they found was a thing where I said, I'd love to program. This was when I was in the middle of Gamergate, which I'd love to talk to you about, because I've got a lot of revised feelings about Gamergate. But during Gamergate, when when some gamers were behaving in very kind of anti-gay or misogynistic ways, I said I'd love to program a gay pride march through the middle of Karachi in Call of Duty, and I did an impression in quotes of the gamers going nuts and going faggot, shouting at them. And they found this one and they printed it up as an example of me.
Again, that's the third joke that Graham's tried to make here. I have not heard anything funny from this man.
Using the word faggot, So it's what it is apart from being this censorious, anti-liberal and undemocratic thing, it's a political lever. I don't know if Benjamin Boyce points this out a lot, and it's basically they're using the language of moral superiority or whatever you want to call it to get ahead, to get political positions, to win student places, it's political. It's purely political, and if you master this language, then
he couldn't actually come up with examples, but you
can get ahead. It's so cynical. Imagine two gay people writing the word faggot into a search engine, trying to find some example of wrong thing,
Yeah, that might be something people would do, Graham. If you had, for instance, said something that was vaguely racist, a black person who is a journalist might start looking for the N-word in your Twitter history, just in case, if they could establish a pattern, which might be important when people are judging your actions, is to establish patterns. If you do not have a pattern of racism, well, this was probably just a bad take. But if you have a pattern of racism, they would say, well, this, and this, he doesn't seem to care, which is what finally has caught up to him.
It's twisted. But anyway, sorry. You gotta stop me rambling. I will ramble if I'm.
No, rambling is great. Rambling is what the podcast is all about. But also as well, but you look at commissioned comedy, and it would seem to me that the quality of comedy that has been commissioned has gone down. And do you think that when you look at, because you look back at Father Ted, there were some real instances there where the comedy was very much on the knuckle. Do you think that would be allowed to be slipped past now, or?
Well, the thing is, I don't know. I mean, it's been a long time since I've kind of swum in those waters. My last show, Motherland is slightly different. I'm not involved with Motherland anymore, but Count Arthur was my attempt to write a family comedy, because I kind of thought when you get them right, they go really big, they can be really successful, so I did my best, and I think we got a couple of things wrong. I think the location was wrong, a bit too, people didn't want to spend all their time in one of those plastic cafes, so I don't know about that kind of near the knuckle edgy comedy anymore. I'll give you a good example of something that I can't really see being made now is Brass Eye. I can't see Brass Eye getting anywhere, because
Brass Eye ran for 6 episodes. And one of those 6 episodes was a satire on how the media likes to scaremonger. I can't help it. That's his example. A show that was basically unsuccessful. 6 episodes. Also, a political satire show doesn't have a very long shelf life in general, right? Like, the favorite thing of the far right is you can't make Blazing Saddles today. Like, yeah, you can't make Blazing Saddles today. Not because of the N-word, but because no one makes Westerns anymore, and it would be very unclear what you're satirizing, right? It's been 50 years since anyone cared about Westerns. I mean, there's been a couple like remakes and stuff, like, you know, the True Grit remake or whatever, but like, it's not a genre, right? Not anymore. And Graham here is like just completely off his rocker that he thinks that a political satire show from almost 30 years ago at this point, isn't it? Wasn't Brass Eye like 95 or something? It's not going to get made, Graham, because the culture has changed and it's not relevant anymore.
You know, I don't think it's so much I don't think it's so much that everyone's become more censorious. I think it's that there's a couple of generations that have grown up with the internet and find any kind of test of their views violent. They think that it's a violent act to question or hold their views up to you know, ridicule or whatever it happens to be. I think that's.
So I think at this point we've made our point as far as comedy goes. I'm going to skip ahead. I don't have timestamps shared, but I should have kept them. But we're going to go, as I recall, they talk about this for a little bit more, and then they talk about Dankula, and then some Gamergate. So let's try to nail it.
MAGA types. But it also, without telling anyone, they also put feminists in there, you know? And
Feminists do like Donald Trump.
Oh, let's go back here, because this sounds like one of those juicy parts.
People who were running the repeal thing in Ireland included a bunch of people who, I'll give you an example of what they did. They ran a thing, they had a blocker up called Repeal Shield. And Repeal Shield was supposedly to block MAGA types. But it also, without telling anyone, they also put feminists in there, you know? And
Feminists do like Donald Trump. Big fans.
Yeah. So
this is the part where Graham is talking about Repeal Shield, which is basically one of the it is a Twitter block bot, a blockchain that deals with lots of homophobic and that kind of content. You know, if you don't want to deal with that content, you can just install a blockchain and this will get rid of it for you. Graham is accidentally thinking here. It's very clear that he thinks blockchains are like blacklists, that they specifically target every account who's on it, which they don't. Blockchains do target key accounts often. Like you can block someone and all of their followers, for example. But that's kind of an indirect sort of way, right? You're not specifically looking at, you know, Pouty Horse 6969 and saying, okay, ban that account specifically. No, you're looking at the commonality, right? It's kind of like how we don't use the anti-terrorism tools that we use against ISIS. ISIS disappeared from the internet because your government, if you're watching this podcast at least, your government almost definitely blocks everything that ISIS touches. And it's easy because there are keywords and there are commonalities and there are connecting threads between all of those radical Islamic accounts. And you haven't seen them on the internet basically for the past 4 years because we've mastered how to take those links and apply them. We don't do that for white supremacy or anything like that because we would accidentally get politicians like Republicans or Tories swept up in that net. so we don't implement that stuff for other issues. And in the same vein, Repeal Shield does the same thing. If you like to harp on trans people a lot and call them beards or whatever the fuck Graham's on about this week, you're going to get lumped in with all the other people who do that, which happens to be MAGA hats and racists and David Duke and whoever.
And at the same time, they got marriage equality passed, and they did that thing. I don't know if you saw the legal document that Denton's. Denton's is this legal firm. This is amazing. Who advised trans activists wanted to pass something that said that kids didn't have to consult their parents or didn't have to get their parents' permission if they began transitioning, right? And they wanted to get that put into law. And a law firm called Denton's.
Graham supposedly hates that, so he hasn't come out and said it yet, but he's on the road that he'll come out in favor of making sure that children can't get abortions without their parents' permission anymore, which is something they can do in the Isles, as far as I know.
Wrote this document where they said, look to Ireland. Ireland did great work passing gender ID on the back of more successful or more popular reforms like marriage equality, you know? So that's what they did. They slipped it in, and another thing that Denton's document.
They say that because in countries like the United States, who have not tagged on transgender rights and other LGBT rights like spousal visits and stuff onto gay marriage, which itself was very popular, you can see how hard the struggle has been to prevent the Trump administration from continually going after them.
Said is try and avoid the media, you know? I mean, as I've said before, what kind of civil rights group avoids the media?
Lots of civil rights groups avoid the media. Malcolm X was particularly notorious for being anti-media friendly.
You know, so all this stuff was piling up, and then I had cancer, and I was on morphine. I always have to include that because I think the morphine made me a lot braver than I should have been. But I was on my hospital bed, and I saw.
Graham's leg is still twitching. Oh God. I don't actually know if he ever had cancer, but if did, you know, cancer. No one's perfect. You win some, you lose some.
Thing that said, you know, now we've dealt with repeal. This is an Irish person. Now we've dealt with repeal. I want to tell you, Graham Linehan is a TERF, and they included a bunch of things I'd liked and so on. You know, the usual things that are just no one could object to unless you're insane. You know, like trans people deserve respect and help, but women deserve their rights too. That's it, you know? So I saw that I was being cancelled, and I kind of got a bit sick of it then, and I kind of thought, well, what am I saying that's wrong? And I examined it.
You can see the wheels turning in his head as he tries to take in criticism, but can't quite seem to fathom how it works. These people are saying I'm wrong, but I'm me.
And it wasn't anything. I wasn't saying anything wrong, you know? And I still stand by, I've never really said anything wrong about this stuff, you know? I can back up all my opinions, you know?
But Graham, wasn't there a...
Graham needs some more of that morphine to stop that fucking leg from shaking. It's so distracting.
part of you... No, I mean, you clearly feel strongly about this, and that's fine. But wasn't there a self-preservation gene that was like, hang on, mate, if you tweet this, you're going to get into some serious problems? Because we've all written a tweet and then looked at it and thought, no, better delete that. Do you not have that?
Well, no, because I wasn't saying anything wrong. I was standing up for reality. I mean, like, I saw, did you see the thing I tweeted yesterday? The guy who got thanked by the Board of Educators?
No, I didn't.
Oh yeah, okay, here it is. This is just extraordinary. I'll send it to you. And you know, I've sent this to various people who I hate, like you know, Josie Long and Owen Jones and so on, and they never answer because there's no answer to it, you know. And it's this guy, like. So anyway, that's a man, right? That is a man. Okay, please put me saying that this is a man over the shot of the man, please.
Yeah,
that's the man. and if we are to make comedy, there has to be a base of reality. There has to be, and any form of writing, you have to have a base of reality. So if something like this is happening, you have two choices. You can adapt to the new reality, or you can fight against it. And I just chose to fight against it because comedy's impossible if that's a woman. Impossible. You know?
and you talk about adapting to reality. One of the things.
Now, I don't know where Graham's going with this, so I can only assume he's using a pre-transition picture of somebody and using that as evidence, I guess, that someone is trans, which is a bad thing, I guess. I have no idea where he's going with that. It's a bad joke because he needs to explain it, you know.
Things I wanted to raise with you is the Count Dankula case.
Okay. Sure.
Because you've gone through quite an evolution on many issues, that being a good example where, you know, we've had Dankula on the show and we've talked to him about his case. And I think at the time you felt that his joke was, you know, he was a way of supporting the Nazis, or he wasn't maybe a Nazi, or maybe he's far right. And
Count Dankula is in UKIP. I still think that's true. Or at least he was in UKIP. So yeah, Count Dankula is far right. He's further right than Nigel Farage.
I think you even helped or kind of organized the taking down of his GoFundMe page and stuff like that. And you've since then, you know, changed your position to diametrically the opposite. And I think you apologized to Marcus. So talk to us about that and what happened there, because the issue of free speech in relation to all of these things is kind of the crucial issue, because if you can't talk about what the truth is, then it becomes very difficult.
Most of this stream is this part about the free speeches, because these guys care more about how Dankula is affected by Graham's about heel turn.
Isn't it?
Yeah, but I have to say that my interest in this doesn't come from a free speech angle. I think it's even more fundamental in a weird way. It's really about being able to say what reality is. I think if we're not able to say what reality is, then we will go mad.
Right, but that's what free speech is for. Is my point, Graham? Is if you don't have free speech, then you can't say what reality is.
Sure, but I thought the reality of Count Dankula.
You can see these guys planting the seed of free speeches into Graham's head. So in about give it 2 weeks, maybe a month on the outside, Graham will start tweeting about free speech if he comes back. And, you know, that'll be the point where we can say that Graham Linehan is less intellectually advanced than what appear to be high schoolers.
That was that he was I saw that he had videos on Stormfront. I saw that he was taking pictures with Tommy Robinson.
Normal people call that evidence, Graham.
And I did that thing that I assembled an identikit of him that possibly wasn't true. That possibly wasn't the whole truth, you know. But I do think, you know,
he gathered evidence and then he came to a conclusion based on the pattern he saw, which was good for him. But once he had to deal with that, oh no, it's gone too far.
Things like the Kekistan flag and all that stuff, they really, I do find all that stuff grim, because it was, to me, it was kind of cheering on one of the worst things that's happened to humanity, which is Trump's win. You know, I wonder if we get 4 more years, will the world survive it? You know, so you know, and
that's where he's lost them.
And I also,
They'll start making fun of him after this.
So at that point, I saw the rise of the far right, and I was really worried about it, really scared they were getting a hold. And I saw this, and I combined that with, there was a thing I think Vox Day wrote or someone like that about how to hide your real anti-Semitic or whatever it happens to be intentions within comedy, because comedy is easier to absorb and stuff like that. But with Dankula, I just think, I know now that he's like, he's just someone who just, I don't know.
It's obvious from Graham's expression that he has not watched anything from Dankula. He's just relying on his alt-right pipeline to tell him what it is. Much like that tweet we read that said he needed Gamergate explained to him initially.
Likes poking those buttons, I guess, but yeah, but
I can't explain it, but you know what I mean, right? You know what I mean. You know what I mean, right? You know what I mean.
The thing about the getting the funding brought down was I remembered later after I apologized that he did say it was for an appeal. That never happened, and I do remember that around that time, a lot of right-wing people were monetizing these stances, and I kind of put him under that umbrella,
But the appeal did happen. Just to be fair to him, the appeal did happen. Yeah.
Right. Well, then I my apologies.
Well, look, no, I'm not trying to get you to apologize again because you already did. What I want to find out is. One of the things I found very interesting when the article came out and you retweeted it yourself and said you partly agree with it, was that you said you were now skeptical about some of the people who were cheering you on.
Oh yeah,
as you were criticizing Dankula. Talk to us about that.
Well, when Gamergate started, Gamergate was something that I felt proud of right up until recently. Because
right up until about 6 days ago,
I saw it as just a misogynistic hate campaign. In fact,
that was an astute observation, Graham.
To interrupt, Graham, because there'll be people listening and watching who might not know what Gamergate is. Can you just give a brief description of what it is and then your attitudes to it?
Let's strap ourselves in for some very amusing takes from Graham.
Yeah, and my description, I'll try and make my description what I thought it was, what I now realize it was, and how it's changed. What I thought Gamergate was, in its entirety, again, like with Dankula, was a hate campaign aimed at women in the gaming industry that was, I was employing things like swatting. There were women gamers who were being, the fucking SWAT teams were coming to their house, killing, one woman, I think her dog was killed, because that's the first thing they do when a SWAT team comes around to your house, they shoot the dog. So again, because it was women being targeted, my anger reflexes got up, because that's the thing I really can't bear. And I just jumped into it, and that's what I thought it was. But what it really was,
which is what it was. We're not going to go into the whole history of Gamergate here. It's 2020, right? If you want to go into the history of Gamergate, because if you're late to the party or whatever, I would recommend you go visit Innuendo Studios on YouTube. He has an excellent series about the rise and fall of Gamergate. I think it's called Why Are You So Angry? Or that's the first title of the first video or something like that. It's starring Angry Jack. You'll find it. But he does a pretty good breakdown of when things started and how they played out. So he has the actual full blown out timeline of the very first few days of where you can track where Gamergate started. And yes, it was a targeted harassment campaign first, and it was ethics in games journalism after.
Was a confluence of millions of different things happening at the same time. There were a lot of, and I now realize there were a lot of young men who were much closer to the truth of what was happening in colleges and stuff than I was. who realized that there was this sense
that colleges are too liberal and safe spacey. Yeah, that's been in the popular discourse since the 1980s, Graham. That's long enough that you should know about it.
glorious, illiberal, canceling kind of culture that was really dangerous, you know. And they were all mixed up with the real right wingers and people like Yiannopoulos, who it seemed to me was very cynically cashing in and trying to.
Graham has conveniently positioned his position as a feminist who just happens to be associated with Nazis and is now drawing Gamergate in, when it's convenient for him, of course, as a group where there were some innocent people in Gamergate who just happened to be aligned with Nazis. You can see the wheels turn.
We're trying to recruit young men into the right. In fact, I think he actually said that that's what he was doing. So, you know, at the time, I was just very hardline. I was like, you know, people would say, what is Gamergate? I'm always confused by Gamergate. And I would say, it's a misogynistic hate campaign, and that's all it is. You know, I had a very hardline, you know, view of it. But I now realize that a lot of the people on my side, like there was one person called Super Gamer Girl, you know, and I saw a picture of him, bald bloke with a huge beard, you know, and these are the people who were doing all this. I thought I was defending women some of the time, and some of the
one thing that I didn't want to bring the images here, but one thing that Gamergaters really loved cataloging, because I had to go to some dark places for some of those earlier screenshots you saw. I didn't want to sift through and pour, right? But, you know, some surface level browsing. But one thing that the Gators really love to make fun of Graham for is how he used to flirt with trans people and they would reject him, which may be responsible for this bout of rage. I don't know. But it's very funny. It is on the internet if you really want to find it. But I wouldn't want to involve the people he was hitting on here. But it's there, right? It's there.
time I wasn't even, I was defending blokes, you know. So I now see that what it really is a kind of a tribalistic war, especially in America, between two groups, is a kind of anarchic kind of Bernie bro types, I guess you'd say. And then on the other side, you have these a combination of MAGA types, but also, you know, people who just like pushing the buttons on the other side. You know, I think it's all bad because in the end, you know, you can't treat everything like a joke. I remember when Trump won, a bunch of right wingers said, "We did it. We elected a meme." You know, and it might be fun, and you might feel, and I'm sure it gives you a huge feeling of power. But you know, it's now killing their friends and family. You know, so I mean, with, you know, the response to,
I mean, okay, that's the one thing I'll give Graham that he said in this entire interview that is actual current events accurate.
Coronavirus. So my by being cancelled and getting into this fight, I realized that there were a lot more currents that I was aware of, and to be honest with you, I'm very proud of the.
Is he having a wank thinking about this? What the fuck is going on, Graham?
I'm very proud of what I've done in the women's rights thing recently, but I think I may have made a few mistakes in the Gamergate time.
Yeah, but I think that's not you know, some people will look at that and go, oh, she was a hypocrite, which I think one of the articles said about you. I actually think someone who's able to change their mind over time, I think that's something that every person should be proud of, is growing as a human being and learning and changing your mind as you realize more. I think that's pretty it's a healthy thing to do.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you know, one thing that I've realized recently is something we should all guard against is certainty. You know, And I like being on this side of this fight because so many people are telling us we're wrong, me and the feminists I support, that you spend most of your time going, am I wrong? And thinking about it and kind of, and then no, I'm actually okay. It's something that one should do. And I think my experience
Most people don't think they're wrong most of the time.
of Gamergate will mean that I do that more often, probably.
And Graham, don't you think part of the problem with the internet is that we have these discussions or debates, whether it's the trans debate, which is incredibly nuanced. There's a lot of depth to this, and we're trying to do it over Twitter. And I can't remember how many characters Twitter has, but you simply can't do it over that type of platform. And also, as well, it's really, in order to have these types of conversations, debate, they really need to be done face to face, aren't they? Wouldn't you say?
Sure. But it's not happening because
Graham's failed every time he's tried.
Like, as you know, one of Stonewall's cast iron rules was no debate. This dent.
There it is. Da 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 da. No debate because of Stonewall. Oh, Stonewall was a riot, Graham. Gay people didn't get their rights by debates. Unfortunately, it would have been nice, but it didn't happen that way.
Document, which perhaps you could put in the link to your. I'll send you. You put it in the link in the video. Saying to avoid media scrutiny is just extraordinary. And you'll notice, when have you ever seen a debate between two opposing sides? They're so rare.
There's lots of them. I could probably just go on Destiny's channel and find 1 billion trans rights debates. But, Graham doesn't know about that. Even though that's his sphere, right? It's not like okay, Twitch and YouTube, that's not like an official public sphere debate, right? It's just us nerds doing what we do. But they are happening, right? And Graham was on the BBC getting platformed for his position. He didn't have to debate anybody.
And it's because what happens, and it's another brilliant way of silencing the women in this, because they're using the new.
How many women are in this conversation?
News kind of ecosystem against.
I mean, I don't want to assume
itself, because the news won't get someone on unless there's an opposing view. So if they get someone like Kathleen Stock on to talk about something, then the other side can go, no, she's a TERF. I'm not appearing with her, and then the piece just doesn't happen. So yeah, I agree. Twitter is a terrible place for it to happen, but I thought I'd use it in a different way. I thought I would just keep hammering.
I thought I'd just keep insulting people until they loved me.
Hammering the points home over and over again until people couldn't mistake the points. And even that doesn't work, because yesterday I got a message from 2 bearded blue tick idiots who are like, I'd love to know what happened to Graham Linehan. What the fuck? How my timeline is right there, and none of the things I'm posting there's a good answer to. So they just ignore it. It's the strangest thing. But yeah, Twitter makes it possible to do that for some reason.
I think gaslighting is the term you used. And I think when it comes to,
Graham thinks he's being gaslit. That's not what gaslighting is, Graham. Gaslighting is an abuse tactic. And to say that Twitter saying that you can't call people cunts because they happen to think Anita Sarkeesian is right and you are wrong, that's not gaslighting.
You've seen our interview with Posey Parker, for example, where, we pushed back on her pretty hard about some of the things because that's our job, and we get to try to get to the bottom of some of these conversations. But, there's biological reality. And
again, for record's sake, I don't know anything about the trigonometry guys, which is a stupid name. So I don't know if that's true or not, but I'll just let it go here.
And we are now in a position that you find yourself in, that when you expressed clearly what is, in my view, and this is why I don't think they do much polling on this, because they know what would happen if they did polling on this.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
That's the view of 95% of the country. If you say to people, if you're born a man, can you change your sex? Most people would say no. Right.
Yeah.
Now, that's not because they hate trans people. It's just because it's
No facts, just it's our hunch.
a fundamental
It feels right.
biological reality. And we are now in a position where, if you express strongly your view that is the case, you're automatically considered transphobic.
Yeah, I know. I mean, that's it. And the bar is so low. Like, we've seen what happened to J.K. Rowling when she tweeted a completely compassionate and reasonable thing, and then there's also so many trans people who agree with us more and more every day, who are just
He's referring to the tweet that famously Mark Hamill liked, and when he was told the context, he rescinded his like and made an apology on Twitter. And he hasn't been canceled because Mark Hamill is a cool guy who understands these things. And J.K. Rowling wasn't canceled for a tweet. She was canceled for a pattern of behavior that the LGBT community as a whole is sick of dealing with her shit.
in despair at the damage that's being done
If someone did a video about that, that would be cool.
because of these lunatics.
Plug.
And there does have to be gatekeeping in this sense, because there are certainly different types of people who are drawn to this. There are like the ideology is so incoherent that it means that, the best example of how incoherent the ideology is that Karen White, the trans woman, who I don't even think it's a trans woman, it's a bloke taking the piss, but Karen White got into a women's prison and sexually assaulted 4 women in a women's prison in the UK.
Not true. Vadim Newquist actually did a video about TERFs just the other day where he breaks this down. Not true.
Where segregation is still the law of the land. That's how bamboozled.
Segregation is the law of the land in prison. Sex offenders are isolated from the general population. So what he's saying is not true.
The prison service, whereby Stonewall's advice. And that kind of advice is now seen through so many different kind of institutions and so on. And it doesn't hold up. It doesn't hold up to anything. So you're constantly second guessing yourself. And I remember someone wrote,
constantly second guessing that when the truth comes in front of me and it doesn't match the obvious propaganda that I've been reading, that I just don't know how I can trust myself anymore. That's what Graham is saying.
a brilliant thing where they said, I've written something, hopefully it isn't transphobic. And it's like they've just kind of painted themselves into the stupidest corner, And I wish there was some like it makes no difference at all. But I tagged in this morning. I sent that photograph of that bloke to John Ronson and Frankie Boyle and a few other people who do the trans women or women thing. I said, is this a woman or whatever? And they Billy Bragg immediately blocked me, and it's just hilarious. They can't answer the questions.
Graham can't get his accolades from his fan base anymore, so now he's just harassing people through DMs on Twitter. He can't handle it. He can't handle people not hearing him. He just loves the smell of his own farts that much. He's just openly admitted here on live stream, live television, that he's been harassing people on Twitter.
They've set up for themselves. You know what I mean? It's so strange. So anyway, sorry, I rambled again.
No, but the one thing I wanted to talk about, and actually with the three of us, because it's unresolved for me, is, Francis and I, do you remember, Francis, when we first even started getting people on to talk about this, we were like, well, it's a minority issue, isn't it? It's like something that, affects like 0.whatever% of the population. is it really worth talking? Is it really that interesting? But
I was always standing with women, Graham, just
you pussy. But it's
Again, that I disavow kind of joke. You could hear it there. You can. I can. We know what it is. Graham doesn't because he's out of his depth. He's dealing with people who have been bullshitting the media for way longer than him.
It's become a major issue, I think, for the reason that you say, because yes, of course, the women's rights issue is a big one, but it speaks to a much more fundamental thing, which is, do we live in a society where you are able to speak the truth? And what this is revealing is there are areas of life on where you are not able to speak the truth, because if you do, at best, people will have the experience of you've had, right?
Sure, yeah. But the shame is that all you need is all we need to happen is for more people to raise their voice. The biggest problem is people frightened to say it. People who are, I mean, a lot of women on Twitter have to be anonymous who are talking about this because
they're socks, because they're men, because they're. Remember when Graham posted as a woman, and he forgot he wasn't on his sock account? I remember. That was like a year ago, right?
Because if they use they're scared of using their real accounts because they might get banned, And I remember when Twitter brought in their misgendering rules.
Well, when it's socks on my side, obviously that's fine.
One tweet said, Twitter have changed their terms and conditions, so misgendering is not happy hunting, everyone, And so this is men silencing women, So yeah,
which I personally approve of.
Calm the fucking leg, Graham.
But it's the Russian way, mate. It's the Russian way.
But it's kind of but what there's two things I don't understand. First thing is I don't understand why more people aren't speaking up. Because once you speak up, you create an atmosphere that makes it okay for other people to speak up, and suddenly you're not alone. Suddenly, like me, for instance, I'm completely isolated amongst my celebrity friends at the moment. There's one or two people who are speaking up for me, who I'll always be grateful.
Well, if speaking up makes it easier for other people to speak up, there must be some other reason people aren't speaking up for you, Graham. Maybe it's because you're wrong.
But for the most part, they not only don't speak up for you, they actually come out against you. Like, I showed a photograph.
This is Graham's entitlement again. I voiced my opinion. Everyone should be loving me for it, but for some reason they aren't.
Some 50-year-old chancer on a college.
Again, is he wanking during this? Does he wank thinking about how much Twitter hates him?
Basketball team with some girls, And John Ronson criticized me for sharing the photograph, not for this pervert on this team, taking advantage again of these incoherent rules. So I just find it's just extraordinary. People won't just not say anything, but they'll go the extra mile and they'll actually throw women under the bus. I mean, Ronson, God Almighty, it blows my mind. The king of nuance, and he believes that trans women are women. It's just he does not see any of the problems. He doesn't see the danger. He doesn't think women's sports are important enough to be bothered about. He doesn't think that the safeguarding problems that arise. I don't know if you help.
All right, from here, I can tell you from personal viewing that this basically descends into a list of all of Graham's grievances. But this is Graham's apology tour to Gamergate. Our final bit on this, because we're closing in on 90 minutes here. Well, 90 minutes it's 75 minutes, but I don't want to go over 90. So let's find out. Let's just look at the comments on a YouTube page for a moment. And let's see how Graham's apology tour went. Shall we see? Most of this guy seems okay, but the TDS is strong with this one. This is a funny example of how someone in the liberal left bubble, as he puts it, has to be kicked in the face to cede even a few inches of ground. This guy still has a long way to go to return to real life. It's one of my favorites. Wait, these rules weren't meant to apply to me. Help, I'm being repressed. You do wonder about his self-awareness when he only realized it was a problem when it impacted him. Graham, Dankula is a Nazi. He was being serious. Also, Graham, why are people pretending jokes are serious? I enjoyed the interview. It's always good to hear the views of someone I don't necessarily agree with. Probably because of that MAGA stuff. The age of the cry bully. I can't tell if that's for or against Graham. When he went in with the Trump derangement syndrome, he lost me. People with Trump derangement syndrome just don't see the world clearly. Also, FYI, there's nothing evil about being right-wing, for fuck's sake. Now my former allies are targeting me. I realize I was wrong. So lots of sympathy from the Gamergate crowd here for his apology tour. Isn't that fun? So this entire exercise was a waste of time, Graham. Congratulations. Yeah. That's all we needed. I'm going to stop sharing. There we go. So yeah, that is Graham Linehan's apology tour during his hunger strike. I have no idea where he'll go from here. If we're lucky, maybe he'll do an interview with Sargon next, or Stefan Molyneux. Wouldn't that be fun? Bring this channel full circle. If we could do that. So yeah, Graham Linehan, still a complete idiot, still an asshole, still has no sense of self-awareness, and is still just a massive cunt. That's all I can say about that. Remember, this is it's only been a week, basically, since Graham's meltdown, when he changed his profile to be like a fucking femboy or something. And he called himself a soft femboy, uwu, massive weeb, trans rights, anarcho-communist. Clearly he doesn't understand terms, but he's seen them enough to go with them and try to parody them. I don't know. But I'm not sure how deep the meltdown is going to go, because he still has not posted on his account. I am checking right now. Still May 8th is his last activity. At least his last public activity, right? Because Twitter has banned him from public action. He can still DM people relentlessly and harass them, as he admitted. But yeah, that's his apology tour. The first step, I imagine, in an apology tour. So keep your eyes open. We'll probably see more of them. If something really stupid happens, we'll probably be back here again. I imagine that they're going to go mostly the same as this. Boring, and Graham gets on rants about people who personally have slighted him. I feel bad for the triggernomics, whatever they are. They kept trying to move Graham into ideological territory, and he just kept sliding back into people on Twitter who he had personal grudges with. They couldn't pin him down on ideological conversation, which I assume they wanted to do, have a more intellectual discussion, but no, you can't do that with Graham. So instead, at the end, as you saw, they were calling themselves feminists and making jokes about putting women in the kitchen and stuff, because all they had left was to take the piss out of this colossally stupid man. So yeah, that's all we have today. I think we got enough Graham into our system. As far as future videos go, I'm probably gonna try my best to get at least one more Andromeda video out before the month is over, and probably the American cut of the last one, which I still haven't bothered to do. I might just go super lazy like the last one and just slap the watermark on it and call it a day. Because I've not found the motivation to go through and get all the stills for a regular American release video. Yeah, that'll be that. I don't know what else I'll be doing from the political side of things on YouTube, but we'll see. Maybe Cog will come and hang out again. Whatever. Thanks for joining. Thank you, chat. Thank you, Wizard. Thank you, Theria.